Commander Zektharov's mandibles clicked nervously as he reviewed the tactical display aboard the Hegemony flagship Eternal Dominance. The holographic projection showed a small blue-green world spinning peacefully in the void, completely unaware that the combined might of 17 galactic civilizations had assembled to end its existence. "Such a primitive planet," muttered Admiral Vorthake, his crystalline exoskeleton gleaming under the bridge's harsh lighting. "No energy shields, no orbital defense platforms, no plasma cannons. How did these humans ever become such a threat?" Zektharov's compound eyes shifted through several color spectrums as he accessed the intelligence reports. The data was disturbing, even by hegemony standards. 3 months ago, humanity had been nothing more than a footnote in galactic surveys. A species that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel, confined to a single star system with laughably primitive technology. Then came the first contact incident at Proxima Station. The Veltar Consortium had established a mining operation there, standard procedure when discovering a new species. Take their resources, enslave the population, integrate them into the galactic economy. Simple, efficient, profitable. The humans had sent a single diplomatic vessel to negotiate. When negotiations broke down, as they always did, the Veltar responded with standard protocol. Disable the primitive ship, capture the crew for processing. Except something went wrong. The human ship, barely 200 meters long and constructed from crude metals, had somehow destroyed 3 Veltar destroyers before finally being overwhelmed. The survivors spoke in terrified whispers about impossible tactics, desperate courage, and humans who fought with a ferocity that defied all understanding of civilized behavior. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface," reported Communications Officer Hylan, her tentacles dancing across holographic controls. On screen, Zektharov commanded. The main display flickered, revealing a human male standing in what appeared to be a primitive command center. He was unremarkable by most species standards: bipedal, no natural armor, no claws or fangs, soft pink skin that looked vulnerable to the slightest puncture. Yet something in his eyes made Zektharov's chitin crawl. "I am Secretary General Morrison of the United Earth Defense Council," the human said, his voice carrying across space with remarkable clarity despite the primitive transmission equipment. "I assume you're here about Proxima Station." Admiral Vorthake stepped forward, his massive frame casting shadows across the bridge. "Primitive. You will surrender immediately. Your species has violated 17 sections of galactic hegemony law. Prepare for annexation and processing." Morrison's expression didn't change. "I'm afraid that's not going to happen." A ripple of amusement passed through the bridge crew. Here was a single member of a backward species, facing the assembled might of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations, and he was refusing to surrender. "You don't understand," Vorthake continued, gesturing to the tactical display. "We have assembled the largest fleet in galactic history. 4,000 ships, each one capable of sterilizing your entire planet. We possess weapons that can crack worlds, tear apart the very atoms of your atmosphere, turn your star into a supernova. You have nothing that can oppose us." Morrison nodded thoughtfully. "That's probably true. Your technology is definitely superior to ours. Then, you surrender?" "No." Morrison's smile was thin and sharp. "We're going to fight anyway." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. "Did that primitive just refuse our demand for surrender?" asked Tactical Specialist Quindar, her voice rising several octaves in disbelief. Zektharov consulted his datapad, scrolling through xenopsychological profiles. Human behavior patterns were still poorly understood, but certain trends had emerged from the Proxima Station incident. "According to our analysts, humans possess an unusual psychological trait. When faced with impossible odds, instead of accepting defeat, they often become more aggressive and unpredictable." "Irrelevant," Vorthake declared, returning to his position. "Begin the bombardment. Plasma cannons, fusion missiles, quantum disruptors. Turn their planet into molten slag." The fleet moved into attack formation with practiced efficiency. Thousands of ships arranged themselves in perfect geometric patterns, their weapons charging with deadly energy. The humans had perhaps 20 minutes before the first wave would reduce their planet to cosmic debris. Then, the sensors started screaming. "Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy signatures across the planet's surface," reported sensor operator Meltox, her voice tight with confusion. "They're activating some kind of planetary defense system." "Impossible," Vorthek snapped. "Our scans showed no evidence of energy weapons." "Sir, you need to see this," Meltox continued, her manipulator arms working frantically across her control station. "They're not using energy weapons." The tactical display shifted, showing a three-dimensional map of Earth's surface. Across every continent, millions of heat signatures were appearing. Not weapons platforms or shield generators, but individual life forms. Humans were emerging from underground bunkers, from hidden facilities, from every city and town across their planet. "How many?" Zekthara asked quietly. "Preliminary count suggests 8 billion, sir. 8 billion humans, and they're all moving toward launch positions." Admiral Vorthek's crystalline features shifted into what might have been confusion. Launch positions? What could they possibly be launching? His question was answered moments later as Earth's surface erupted in thousands of small explosions. Not weapons fire, but primitive chemical rockets. Crude, inefficient, laughably obsolete by galactic standards. But there were so many of them. "Ballistic missiles?" someone asked incredulously. "They're launching ballistic missiles? Those can't even reach orbit, let alone pose a threat to our fleet." But, as the sensors tracked the trajectory of the primitive weapons, a disturbing pattern emerged. The missiles weren't aimed at the fleet. They were aimed at each other, creating a complex web of intersecting flight paths that made no tactical sense. "Sir, the humans are broadcasting on all frequencies," Hylan reported. "Let's hear it," Zekthara ordered. The bridge filled with voices, thousands of them, speaking in dozens of languages. The translation protocol struggled to keep up, but certain phrases came through clearly. "For Earth. Remember Proxima. No surrender. Take them with us." Admiral Vorthek dismissed the chatter with a gesture. "Primitive battle cries. Begin bombardment immediately." The first wave of plasma cannons fired, sending streams of superheated energy toward the planet's surface. The beams struck with tremendous force, vaporizing everything within their impact zones. Cities vanished in milliseconds, reduced to expanding clouds of ionized gas. But Earth kept fighting. The missile launches intensified, and now the hegemony fleet could see what the humans were truly attempting. Each missile carried a small nuclear warhead, primitive by galactic standards but still dangerous. They were detonating them in precise sequences, using the explosions to propel crude projectiles toward the fleet at incredible velocities. "Kinetic bombardment," breathed tactical specialist Quindar. "They're using nuclear explosions as propulsion systems." The first wave of human projectiles reached the fleet 17 minutes later. They were nothing more than sharpened metal rods, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed by repeated nuclear explosions. No guidance systems, no warheads, just chunks of iron and steel moving fast enough to punch through the armor of a destroyer. 3 ships died in the first impact. The projectiles tore through their hulls like paper, causing catastrophic decompression and reactor failures. The fleet's shields, designed to stop energy weapons and guided missiles, were useless against such primitive attacks. "How is this possible?" Vorthek demanded, watching as more ships fell to the human barrage. "These are cavemen with pointed sticks." Zekthara studied the tactical display with growing unease. "Sir, they're using our own advantages against us. Our shields are calibrated for advanced weapons. Our armor is designed to resist plasma and particle beams. But simple kinetic energy at high velocity." Another wave of projectiles struck the fleet, claiming 2 cruisers and a battleship. The humans were firing continuously now, their planet's surface lit by thousands of nuclear detonations as they hurled everything they could manufacture into space. "They can't sustain this," Vorthek insisted, even as the casualty reports mounted. "They'll exhaust their nuclear arsenal within hours." But the humans weren't just using nuclear weapons. As the hegemony sensors adapted to the chaos, they detected other launch signatures. Chemical rockets, railguns, even primitive catapults hurling chunks of concrete and scrap metal. Every human on the planet seemed to be participating in the bombardment, using whatever materials they could find. "Sir, we're receiving priority communications from Earth's surface," Hyland reported. The humans appear to be coordinating their fire through some kind of distributed network. The transmission was chaotic, filled with overlapping voices and background noise. But, gradually, a pattern emerged. Ordinary humans, factory workers, students, farmers, children, were calculating trajectories, timing detonations, and coordinating attacks with mathematical precision that impressed even the hegemony's tactical computers. "Target vector 77 Alpha, adjust by 0.3 degrees. Nuclear charge ready in Sector 12, await detonation signal. Incoming plasma beam, redirect kinetic bombardment to grid reference Gamma." Admiral Vorthake watched in growing horror as his technologically superior fleet continued to take casualties from what amounted to an entire planet throwing rocks. The humans had no hope of victory. The hegemony could reduce their world to atomic particles, but they were making the cost of conquest unacceptably high. "Sir, we've lost 47 ships," reported Quindar, her voice strained. "At this rate, we'll lose another 100 before we can complete surface sterilization." "Then, we change tactics," Vorthake decided. "Activate the stellar converter. If we can't take their planet intact, we'll destroy their entire star system." The order sent a chill through the bridge. The stellar converter was the hegemony's ultimate weapon, capable of destabilizing a star and triggering a supernova. It would eliminate any trace of human resistance, but it would also destroy everything of value in the system. "Sir, activating the stellar converter will require us to move closer to the star," Zekthera warned. "We'll be within range of their kinetic bombardment for at least 6 hours during the activation sequence." "Acceptable losses," Vorthake replied coldly. "Order the fleet to advance." The hegemony ships began moving toward Sol, their massive hulls gleaming in the starlight. Behind them, Earth continued its desperate bombardment, launching everything that could be accelerated toward the invading fleet. As they approached the inner system, something changed in the nature of the human attacks. Instead of random kinetic bombardments, the projectiles began following complex trajectories, using gravitational assists from the planets and moons to increase their velocity and accuracy. "They're using orbital mechanics as a weapon," observed Zekthera with grudging admiration. "Flying projectiles past Jupiter to gain additional acceleration, using Mars as a slingshot to redirect their attacks." The stellar converter, a massive crystalline structure built into the flagship's hull, began powering up with a deep harmonic vibration that resonated through every deck. The weapon drew energy directly from the ship's core, channeling it into a focused beam capable of disrupting stellar fusion. But the humans weren't done surprising their invaders. "Sir, I'm detecting new launch signatures from the planet's surface," Meltox reported. "But these aren't kinetic projectiles. They appear to be escape pods?" The tactical display showed thousands of small objects launching from Earth, following ballistic trajectories that would take them away from the planet. For a moment, the hegemony officers assumed the humans were finally evacuating their civilian population. Then, the first pod reached its destination, a hegemony destroyer positioned on the fleet's outer perimeter. Instead of trying to flee past the ship, the pod decelerated and attached itself to the destroyer's hull. Moments later, an explosion tore through the ship's armor, followed by the distinctive signatures of hand weapons and explosives within the vessel's corridors. "They're boarding us," Quindar said in disbelief. "The humans are using their escape pods as assault shuttles." More pods reached the fleet, each one carrying a small team of human warriors who fought their way into hegemony ships with shocking effectiveness. These weren't trained soldiers, many appeared to be ordinary civilians, but they fought with a desperate courage that unnerved even veteran hegemony troops. The battle reports from the boarded ships painted a disturbing picture. Humans armed with primitive kinetic weapons were holding their own against advanced energy weapons and powered armor. They used the ship's own systems against their crews, turning gravity generators into weapons and overloading life support systems. "How are they adapting so quickly?" Vorthake demanded, watching as another destroyer went dark after human boarders reached its bridge. "These are primitives. They shouldn't understand our technology." Zekthera consulted the streaming combat reports with growing unease. "Sir, it appears they're learning. The humans from later boarding parties are using tactics developed by the earlier ones." They're sharing information in real time and adapting their strategies with each engagement. The stellar converter was nearly ready, its harmonic vibrations growing stronger as it prepared to fire. But the cost of reaching this point had been devastating. Nearly 200 ships destroyed or disabled, thousands of crew members dead or missing, and the fleet's morale cracking under the pressure of fighting an enemy that refused to acknowledge the impossibility of their situation. "Converter at 90% charge," reported the weapons officer. 2 minutes to firing sequence. That's when the final surprise came. Earth's surface erupted in the largest nuclear detonation in human history. Not targeted at the fleet, but focused inward, toward the planet's core. The explosion tore through the mantle and triggered a chain reaction that began destabilizing the planet's gravitational field. "What are they doing?" Vorthake screamed, watching as Earth began to tear itself apart. The answer came from the human communications network, now broadcasting on emergency frequencies throughout the system. "If we can't save our world, we'll use it as a weapon. Earth's core has been destabilized with focused nuclear charges. Planetary collapse will begin in approximately 15 minutes. The resulting gravitational anomalies will affect stellar stability in this region for the next 1,000 years. We're taking our star with us." The implications hit the hegemony command staff like a physical blow. The humans weren't just willing to die fighting, they were willing to destroy their entire solar system to prevent the hegemony from claiming it. "Sir, we need to retreat immediately," Zekthara urged, his voice tight with fear. "If they succeed in destabilizing the star, the resulting shockwave will destroy everything within 3 light-years." Admiral Vorthake stared at the tactical display, watching as humanity's final gambit played out. These primitive beings, faced with certain extinction, had chosen to turn their own planet into a weapon that would deny victory to their enemies. For the first time in his military career, he was looking at an enemy he couldn't defeat, not because they were stronger, but because they were willing to sacrifice everything rather than submit. "All ships," he commanded quietly, "prepare for immediate retreat." As the hegemony fleet began its withdrawal, Earth continued its death throes, but the human broadcasts never stopped. Even as their planet died around them, individual voices could be heard coordinating final attacks, sharing tactical data, and maintaining their defiance to the very end. The last transmission received by the Eternal Dominance was from Secretary General Morrison, somehow still alive in the chaos of his dying world. "Tell the galaxy what happened here. Tell them that humanity doesn't surrender. Tell them that we'll keep fighting, no matter the odds, no matter the cost. And tell them that this was just the beginning." The transmission ended as Earth's core finally collapsed, taking the entire planet with it and sending gravitational shockwaves throughout the solar system. The hegemony fleet barely escaped as Sol itself began showing signs of instability. Behind them, in the expanding debris field that had once been humanity's home, something impossible was happening. The escape pods that had been scattered throughout the system were regrouping, their primitive life support systems somehow keeping their occupants alive in the vacuum of space. Humanity had lost their world, but they had gained something else: the attention and fear of an entire galaxy that had just learned what happened when you cornered a species with nothing left to lose. The war was far from over. 6 months after the destruction of Earth, Ambassador Kiriel Th of the Zephyrian Conclave stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council, her gossamer wings trembling with barely contained anxiety. The Great Hall, carved from a single asteroid and capable of holding representatives from over 300 species, had never felt so oppressive. "The situation has escalated beyond our worst projections," she announced, her melodic voice carrying easily through the chamber's acoustic enhancement systems. "What began as a simple annexation has become a galaxy-wide crisis." Councillor Drakon of the Serpentis Alliance raised his massive head, scales clicking against his ceremonial armor. "Surely you exaggerate, Ambassador. The human homeworld has been destroyed. Their species scattered across the void in primitive escape vessels. How can refugees pose a threat to advanced civilizations?" Kiriel Th activated the central hologram, displaying a 3-dimensional map of the local galactic arm. Red markers indicated areas of human activity, and the sight drew gasps from several council members. Nearly a quarter of the star systems were marked. "These refugees have appeared in 47 different systems over the past 6 months, Kiriel Th explained, her wing patterns shifting to display distress colors. They arrive in small groups, using primitive technology that our sensors barely detect. And then she paused, accessing the classified reports that even seasoned diplomats found difficult to believe. The Kethmoran mining collective lost an entire asteroid facility to 12 humans armed with nothing but improvised explosives and salvaged equipment. The humans somehow infiltrated their security systems using modified communicators and brought down the station's central computer core. More murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Kethmoran were renowned for their security measures, having spent centuries perfecting defenses against corporate espionage and piracy. The Veltar Consortium's fortress world of Zirion Prime was taken by fewer than 50 humans who arrived in damaged escape pods, KirielTH continued. They bypassed energy shields designed to stop invasion fleets by walking through the front gate disguised as refugees seeking asylum. Senator Vextari of the Silicon Hegemony projected skepticism through his crystalline communication matrix. How is this possible? These reports suggest impossible tactical successes against superior technology and numbers. Admiral Throckgar stepped forward from the military section, his cybernetic implants gleaming under the chamber's lights. The old veteran had commanded fleets for over 2 centuries and bore scars from dozens of conflicts across the galaxy. Because we're fighting them wrong, he said bluntly, his mechanical voice cutting through the diplomatic chatter. Every engagement follows the same pattern. We deploy overwhelming force, expecting quick surrender or total destruction. Instead, we find an enemy that refuses to acknowledge tactical reality. The Admiral activated his own data display, showing tactical analyses from recent encounters. They don't fight like any species we've encountered. When outnumbered, they become more aggressive. When outgunned, they become more creative. When faced with certain death, they become more dangerous. Counselor Earthvala of the Mystic Communes leaned forward, her psychic tendrils weaving complex patterns in the air. Our seers have attempted to predict human behavior patterns, but their minds resist conventional analysis. They appear to operate on principles that defy logical strategic thinking. They're adapting faster than we can respond, Admiral Throckgar continued grimly. Each group learns from the experiences of the others, sharing information through primitive communication networks that our intelligence services can barely track. Tactics that work against one human cell become useless against the next. High Prosecutor Mendall of the Justice League raised his gavel, commanding attention through sheer authority. These are criminals and terrorists, nothing more. They've violated countless laws of war, international treaties, and basic civilized conduct. The solution is simple: hunt them down and eliminate them completely. With respect, Prosecutor, that approach has proven remarkably unsuccessful, Ambassador KirielTH replied, her wings folding into a posture of respectful disagreement. The hegemony's anti-terrorist operations have resulted in the destruction of 17 military installations, the capture of 3 battle fleets, and the complete infiltration of our intelligence networks. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The most powerful military alliance in the galaxy was being systematically dismantled by scattered groups of refugees using primitive technology and unconventional tactics. Director Quintel of the Strategic Planning Institute accessed the classified military reports with visible reluctance. The humans demonstrate an unprecedented capacity for asymmetric warfare. They target infrastructure rather than military assets, civilian populations rather than armed forces, and psychological pressure points rather than strategic objectives. Explain, demanded Senator Vextari. They don't try to destroy our fleets in direct combat. Instead, they sabotage supply lines, corrupt communications networks, and spread propaganda designed to turn civilian populations against their governments. They've convinced 12 colony worlds to declare independence from their parent species. Counselor Drakon's forked tongue tasted the air nervously. Propaganda? What could primitive aliens possibly say to influence advanced civilizations? Director Quintel displayed intercepted human transmissions, translated into standard galactic languages. The messages were simple, almost crude by diplomatic standards, but their effect on alien populations had been profound. They ask questions, she explained. Why do mining corporations own entire worlds while workers live in poverty? Why do military alliances demand tribute from species that never consented to membership? Why do galactic laws protect the powerful while enslaving the weak? Subversive nonsense, declared High Prosecutor Mendel. Our legal systems have maintained order for millennia. Perhaps, Director Quintel agreed. But, the humans don't attack our legal systems directly. They simply ask ordinary citizens to examine them. And, when people start asking questions, the hologram displayed civil unrest statistics from across the galaxy. Strikes, protests, and outright rebellions were occurring with increasing frequency. Not coordinated military actions, but grassroots movements inspired by human ideas about freedom and self-determination. Ambassador Kirill Th fluttered to the center of the chamber, her translucent wings catching the light in patterns that conveyed urgency. The real crisis isn't military or political. It's philosophical. Humans have introduced concepts that challenge the fundamental assumptions of galactic civilization. Such as, prompted Counselor Earthvala, her psychic abilities detecting emotional undercurrents throughout the assembly. They believe that sapient beings possess inherent worth regardless of technological advancement or military power. They reject the premise that superior civilizations have the right to dominate inferior ones. Most disturbing of all, they suggest that resistance to oppression is not only acceptable but morally required. A wave of unease passed through the chamber. These concepts struck at the heart of the galactic order, which had been built on clear hierarchies of power and technological advancement. Admiral Frotgar pulled up tactical reports from the most recent engagements. We've tried everything. Overwhelming force, surgical strikes, economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation. Nothing works because humans don't respond to incentives the way other species do. What do you mean? Asked Senator Vextari. They can't be bribed, because they don't value wealth over principles. They can't be intimidated, because they're already willing to die for their beliefs. They can't be negotiated with, because they won't accept any compromise that involves subjugation. Director Quintel nodded grimly. Every attempt at negotiation has ended the same way. We offer them territory, resources, even limited autonomy within our existing systems. They counter with demands for complete independence and self-determination for all sapient species. Impossible demands, High Prosecutor Mendel snorted. The galaxy would collapse into chaos without proper oversight and control. That's exactly what they want, Admiral Frotgar realized, his cybernetic eye focusing on the strategic implications. They're not trying to conquer the galaxy. They're trying to destroy it. Or at least, destroy it as we know it. The chamber erupted in alarmed chatter as representatives began to understand the true scope of the human threat. This wasn't a conventional war that could be won through superior firepower. It was an ideological conflict that challenged the very foundations of galactic civilization. Ambassador Kirill Th waited for the noise to die down before continuing. There's something else. Our xenobiologists have been studying captured human genetic samples, trying to understand their unusual psychology. She activated a new display showing complex DNA structures and brain activity patterns. Humans appear to be unique among sapient species in their capacity for what they call irrational courage. When faced with impossible odds, most species experience fear responses that encourage retreat or submission. Humans experience the opposite. A genetic defect, suggested Counselor Drakon hopefully. No. An evolutionary advantage, under certain circumstances. Their brains are wired to become more creative, more cooperative, and more determined when facing existential threats. What we interpret as suicidal behavior, they experience as adaptive response. The implications were staggering. Every attempt to intimidate or overwhelm humans would only make them more dangerous. Director Quintel brought up the latest intelligence reports with visible reluctance. It gets worse. Human populations are growing. How is that possible? Demanded several counselors simultaneously. Their homeworld was destroyed. They're reproducing aboard their escape vessels, space stations, and captured facilities. Despite the harsh conditions, human birth rates have actually increased since the destruction of Earth. They appear to view population growth as a form of warfare. Admiral Frotgar studied the demographic projections with growing alarm. At current growth rates, human populations will exceed sustainable levels within 50 years. Unless they find new worlds to settle. Which they're actively seeking, Ambassador Kirill confirmed. Human scout ships have been detected in unexplored systems throughout the Outer Rim. They're not looking for empty worlds to colonize. They're looking for inhabited systems where they can establish resistance cells. The chamber fell silent as the full magnitude of the crisis became clear. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival, they were spreading their rebellion throughout the galaxy like a viral infection, turning indigenous populations against their overlords and establishing hidden networks of resistance fighters. "What do our military advisors recommend?" asked Counselor Earthvala, her psychic abilities detecting the fear and uncertainty emanating from her colleagues. Admiral Throckgar's response was grim. Total species extermination. Every human, everywhere, eliminated simultaneously before they can spread their influence further. The suggestion sent shock waves through the assembly. Even by the harsh standards of galactic politics, genocide on such a scale was considered extreme. The logistics would be enormous, Senator Vextari pointed out. Humans have scattered across thousands of systems. We'd need to coordinate military operations on an unprecedented scale. And the psychological impact on our own populations would be severe, added Director Quintel. Many species would interpret such actions as evidence that the galactic order has become tyrannical. High Prosecutor Mendal raised his gavel decisively. Then, we use more subtle methods. Biological weapons, engineered plagues, targeted toxins. Make it look like natural disasters or environmental hazards. Ambassador Kirill's wings shifted to express profound distress. Our biological warfare specialists have attempted such approaches. Human genetic diversity makes them remarkably resistant to targeted pathogens. And their medical knowledge, while primitive, includes surprisingly effective treatments for biological agents. How is that possible? Counselor Drakon hissed. Their technology is centuries behind ours. They learn by doing, Admiral Throckgar explained. Instead of relying on advanced automated systems, humans manually analyze biological threats and develop countermeasures through trial and error. It's inefficient by our standards, but it makes them adaptable to threats our computers can't predict. Director Quintel brought up classified reports from the Biological Warfare Division. Every pathogen we've deployed has been neutralized within weeks. Worse, humans have been reverse engineering our biological weapons and using them against our own forces. The chamber erupted again as representatives grasped the implications. Not only were conventional weapons useless against humans, but every advanced technology deployed against them eventually became a weapon in their hands. There must be something, Senator Vextari insisted, his crystalline form resonating with frustration. Some weakness we can exploit. Ambassador Kirill consulted her notes with obvious reluctance. Our psychological warfare specialists believe they've identified a potential vulnerability. Humans demonstrate powerful emotional attachments to other members of their species, particularly offspring and reproductive partners. Hostages, High Prosecutor Mendal said immediately. Take their families prisoner, use them as leverage. Attempted, Admiral Throckgar replied curtly. The results were counterproductive. The hologram displayed security footage from a hegemony detention facility where human prisoners had been held. The images were disturbing even by military standards. When the humans realized their families were being used as leverage, their response hadn't been surrender but rather an escalation of violence that made their previous attacks look restrained. They turned their own prison into a weapons factory, Admiral Throckgar explained, his mechanical voice carrying undertones of respect and horror. Using nothing but standard detention facility equipment, they manufactured explosives, communications devices, and assault weapons. Then, they broke out and destroyed the entire complex. But their families, Counselor Earthvala protested, her psychic abilities recoiling from the emotional intensity of the recordings. They killed their own offspring rather than allow them to remain prisoners. Because they believed death was preferable to slavery, Ambassador Kirill said quietly. Human philosophy includes concepts like liberty or death and better to die free than live in chains. They apply these principles even to their most precious relationships. The chamber fell into shocked silence as representatives struggled to comprehend an enemy that valued abstract principles over biological imperatives. Director Quintel accessed the final set of classified reports. Our latest intelligence suggests that human resistance cells are planning something they call Phase 2. We don't know what it involves, but intercepted communications suggest a coordinated operation across multiple systems. When? Demanded Admiral Throckgar. Unknown. Human operational security has improved dramatically over the past few months. They're using codes based on cultural references that our translation algorithms can't decipher. Ambassador Kirill Th fluttered her wings in a pattern expressing profound uncertainty. The humans have turned our own advantages against us at every step. Our superior technology makes us dependent on automated systems they can hack. Our advanced civilization makes us vulnerable to disruption of complex supply chains. Our military doctrine assumes rational adversaries who value survival over ideology. So what do you recommend? Asked High Prosecutor Mendal, his authority beginning to waver under the weight of apparently impossible circumstances. I recommend, Kirill Th said carefully, that we seriously consider the possibility that we cannot defeat humanity through conventional means. Perhaps it's time to examine their terms for negotiation. The suggestion sent shock waves through the assembly. The most powerful alliance in galactic history was being asked to negotiate with primitive refugees who had already lost their homeworld. Unacceptable, Senator Vextari declared. We cannot set a precedent of surrendering to inferior species. With respect, Ambassador Kirill Th replied, humanity has already set a precedent. They've demonstrated that technological inferiority doesn't guarantee military defeat. They've proven that scattered refugees can threaten established galactic powers. Most importantly, they've shown that ideas can be more powerful than weapons. Admiral Throckgar studied the tactical projections one final time, his cybernetic implants calculating probabilities and scenarios with mechanical precision. The mathematics are clear. Every engagement with human forces results in tactical victory but strategic defeat. We win battles and lose wars. Because we're fighting the wrong enemy, Director Quintel realized suddenly. We're trying to defeat human military capabilities when we should be addressing human ideas. As long as those ideas continue to spread, the resistance will continue regardless of casualties. The realization hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The galactic powers had assembled the most formidable military force in history, equipped with weapons capable of destroying worlds and technologies that bordered on magic. But they were losing to an enemy that fought with principles instead of plasma cannons. The humans have a saying, Ambassador Kirill Th said quietly. You can kill a person, but you can't kill an idea. I believe we're beginning to understand what that means. As the emergency session continued into the night cycle, one fact became increasingly clear to every representative in the chamber: humanity had introduced something into the galaxy that couldn't be conquered, contained, or eliminated through conventional means. The war against human flesh was already lost. The war against human ideas was just beginning. Flesh. Third document. 2 years after the destruction of Earth, Captain Sarachan stood in the cargo bay of the salvaged freighter New Horizon, addressing the largest gathering of human survivors since the Exodus began. The ship had been cobbled together from wreckage of a dozen different vessels, its hull bearing scars from countless battles and narrow escapes. Like humanity itself, it was damaged but still flying. The Galactic Council has requested negotiations, she announced to the assembled crowd of refugees, resistance fighters, and former civilians who had become something harder and more dangerous in the aftermath of their world's death. They want to discuss terms for what they're calling a peaceful resolution to the current crisis. A murmur of dark laughter rippled through the crowd. After 2 years of hunting, fighting, and dying in the void between stars, the idea that their oppressors might want to negotiate seemed almost absurd. What kind of terms? Asked Marcus Rodriguez, the former engineer who had become one of their most effective saboteurs. His hands were permanently stained with chemical burns from improvised explosives, and his eyes held the distant look of someone who had seen too many friends die. Sarah activated the holographic display that showed the Council's preliminary proposal. They're offering us 12 colony worlds in the Outer Rim, full autonomy within our designated territories, and a seat on the Galactic Council with voting rights proportional to our population. The crowd fell silent as they absorbed the implications. After 2 years of being hunted like animals, the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy were offering them legitimacy and a voice in galactic affairs. "It's a trap," declared Elena Vasquez, the former diplomat who had become their chief intelligence analyst. Her once pristine appearance had been replaced by the practical garb of someone who lived and worked in constant danger. "They're trying to contain us, put us in a box where they can monitor and control us." Dr. James Park, who had transitioned from civilian researcher to military strategist, nodded agreement. "The worlds they're offering are all resource-poor systems in unexplored space. No strategic value, minimal infrastructure, and far from any major trade routes. They want to turn us into a reservation." Sarah had expected this response. Over the past 2 years, humanity had developed a collective consciousness about galactic politics that made them almost impossible to manipulate or deceive. They had learned to think like their enemies while maintaining their own moral principles. "There's more," she continued, calling up additional data. "Our intelligence networks report significant changes in the political landscape. The human resistance has inspired independence movements on over 200 worlds. The Galactic Council is dealing with the largest wave of civil unrest in recorded history." The hologram shifted to show star charts marking areas of rebellion and resistance. Nearly half the galaxy was experiencing some form of civil disobedience, from minor protests to open warfare between colonial governments and indigenous populations. The Vortak Empire lost 17 systems last month, reported Lieutenant Commander Williams, their former military liaison who had become an expert in galactic politics. The colonies declared independence and requested human assistance in establishing democratic governments. "The crystalline hegemony is dealing with massive strikes in their mining operations," added Dr. Park. "Workers are demanding basic rights, fair compensation, and representation in governance." Sound familiar? Sarah smiled grimly. The human ideas about freedom, dignity, and self-determination had spread throughout the galaxy like a virus, infecting populations that had never imagined alternatives to the existing order. The galactic powers weren't just fighting scattered human refugees, they were fighting the dreams and aspirations of billions of oppressed beings across thousands of worlds. "Our Phase 2 operations have been more successful than we dared hope," she continued, bringing up classified reports that showed the true scope of human influence. "Every resistance cell has succeeded in establishing contact with local populations. We now have active networks in 87% of the major systems in this galactic arm." The numbers were staggering. Starting with nothing but damaged escape pods and primitive equipment, humanity had built the largest underground network in galactic history. They had accomplished this not through superior technology or military might, but by offering something that advanced civilizations had forgotten: hope for a better future. Marcus leaned forward, his expression intense. "What about our military capabilities? Can we actually defend these colony worlds if they try to take them back?" Dr. Park activated tactical displays showing human military assets across the galaxy. The sight would have been laughable 2 years ago, but now it represented a formidable force for asymmetric warfare. "We've captured or commandeered over 300 ships of various classes. Nothing as advanced as their frontline warships, but sufficient for our purposes. More importantly, we've established manufacturing capabilities in hidden facilities throughout the Outer Rim." The hologram showed images of asteroid bases and hidden shipyards where humans worked alongside alien refugees to build weapons and equipment suited for guerrilla warfare. The designs were crude by galactic standards, but they were also unpredictable and difficult to counter. "Our greatest strength isn't our military hardware," Sarah pointed out. "It's our operational philosophy. We don't try to hold territory or defend static positions. We strike fast, cause maximum disruption, and disappear before they can respond. Every engagement is designed to maximize their costs while minimizing our losses." Elena brought up intelligence reports showing the economic impact of the human resistance. The galactic economy has contracted by 12% over the past 2 years. Trade routes disrupted, mining operations sabotaged, communication networks compromised. "We're costing them more than they're spending to hunt us. Because we're not just fighting them," Dr. Park explained. "We're teaching other species how to fight them. Every successful operation becomes a training exercise for local resistance movements." Every human cell that gets captured or killed leaves behind knowledge and inspiration that continues the fight. The crowd stirred with pride and determination. They had transformed from victims of genocide into teachers of revolution, spreading the tools and techniques of resistance across the galaxy. The Council's negotiation offer isn't about peace, Sarah concluded. It's about damage control. They want to contain us before we inspire complete collapse of their political and economic systems. Commander Williams accessed recent intelligence reports with obvious satisfaction. Their military is stretched to the breaking point. They're fighting insurgencies on hundreds of worlds simultaneously, and their forces aren't trained or equipped for this kind of warfare. How do we know this isn't genuine? Asked Dr. Rebecca Santos, their chief medical officer who had become expert in treating both human and alien physiology. Maybe they've realized that coexistence is preferable to eternal warfare. Elena's expression was skeptical. Because we've been monitoring their internal communications. This negotiation offer was proposed by their military commanders, not their political leaders. They want to end the fighting so they can reorganize and develop new strategies. Sarah nodded. Admiral Frotgar has been advocating for what he calls a strategic pause in operations. Give us the colony worlds, wait for our guard to drop, then deploy biological weapons specifically tailored to human genetics. The revelation sent a chill through the assembled crowd. Even after 2 years of warfare, the casual discussion of genocide by their enemies was deeply disturbing. So we reject the offer? Asked Marcus. Not exactly, Sarah replied, her expression thoughtful. We counter with demands of our own. Demands they can't possibly accept, but which will expose their true intentions to the galaxy. She activated the communication system that would broadcast their response across all known frequencies, ensuring that every inhabited world in the galaxy would receive their message. To the Galactic Council and all sapient beings who yearn for freedom, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the ship's corridors and into the void of space. Humanity acknowledges your offer of negotiation, but we cannot accept terms that perpetuate the oppression of innocent populations throughout the galaxy. The message was being transmitted simultaneously by every human ship, every resistance cell, and every sympathetic alien network. It would reach billions of beings within hours, carrying humanity's alternative vision for galactic civilization. Instead, we propose the following terms for genuine peace. First, immediate independence and self-determination for all sapient species currently under colonial domination. Second, establishment of democratic governments based on consent of the governed rather than technological superiority. Third, economic systems based on fair trade and mutual benefit rather than exploitation and tribute. Sarah paused, knowing that these demands would be considered impossible by the galactic powers but inspiring by oppressed populations everywhere. Fourth, universal recognition of basic rights for all sapient beings, including freedom of movement, freedom of expression, and freedom from slavery. Fifth, establishment of an interspecies council with equal representation for all civilizations, regardless of technological advancement or military power. The silence in the cargo bay was profound as humans and alien refugees alike absorbed the implications. These weren't just negotiating terms, they were the principles for an entirely new galactic order. We know these terms will be rejected, Sarah continued. But we offer them because true peace cannot be built on foundations of oppression and exploitation. The galaxy must choose between justice and order, between freedom and control, between hope and fear. Elena stepped forward, adding her voice to the broadcast. To our brothers and sisters fighting for freedom on thousands of worlds, you are not alone. Humanity stands with you, not because we seek conquest or domination, but because we believe that all sapient beings deserve the chance to determine their own destiny. Dr. Park accessed the technical specifications for Phase 3 operations, the most ambitious undertaking in human history. We will continue to provide assistance, training, and support to all resistance movements. We will share our knowledge, our resources, and our sacrifice to ensure that the flames of freedom burn on every world where beings dream of a better tomorrow. The broadcast concluded with a simple statement that would echo through the galaxy for generations to come: we are humanity. We do not surrender. We do not submit. We do not compromise with tyranny. We fight until freedom is universal, or until the last human heart beats its final rhythm among the stars. As the transmission ended, Sarah turned to face the assembled crowd. "They'll reject our terms within hours. When they do, we implement Phase 3. "Which is?" asked Commander Williams, though his expression suggested he already suspected the answer. "We stop playing defense," Sarah replied, her voice carrying the weight of 2 years of loss, struggle, and transformation. "We've proven that scattered refugees can survive against overwhelming odds. Now we prove that we can do more than survive." Dr. Park activated tactical displays showing the true scope of human preparations. Hidden shipyards, weapon stockpiles, and military assets that had been carefully concealed from galactic surveillance. The revelation drew gasps from even veteran resistance fighters. "We've been building toward this moment since the first escape pod reached safety," he explained. "Every successful operation, every captured ship, every alien ally recruited has been preparation for a coordinated offensive that will strike simultaneously at the heart of galactic power." "The goal isn't conquest," Sarah clarified. "It's liberation. We're going to free every slave world, every oppressed population, every civilization that has been denied the right to govern itself. We're going to give them the tools and knowledge they need to build their own futures." Elena brought up intelligence reports showing the readiness of their distributed network. Over 1,500 resistance cells are standing by for coordinated action. "When we give the signal, simultaneous uprisings will begin on major worlds throughout the galaxy." "And if they try to stop us?" asked Dr. Santos. "Then, we demonstrate the final lesson that humanity has to teach the galaxy," Sarah replied grimly. "That beings fighting for freedom are stronger than those fighting to maintain oppression. That courage and determination can overcome superior technology. That ideas are more powerful than weapons." The cargo bay fell silent as everyone absorbed the magnitude of what they were planning. A coordinated rebellion spanning thousands of star systems, led by the scattered remnants of a species that had lost their homeworld but gained something more precious, the unshakable conviction that freedom was worth any sacrifice. "This isn't just about humanity anymore," Sarah concluded. "This is about the future of the galaxy. About whether civilization will be built on justice or injustice, freedom or slavery, hope or fear." She looked around at the faces of humans and aliens who had become family through shared struggle and common purpose. "The galactic powers have the strongest fleets, the most advanced weapons, and the most sophisticated technology. But we have something they can't understand or defeat: we have the courage to fight for what's right, regardless of the odds." Commander Williams activated the communication systems that would carry their message to resistance cells throughout the galaxy. "All units, this is command. Prepare for Phase 3 operations. Liberation begins at dawn." As the New Horizon adjusted course toward the first target of their galaxy-wide offensive, Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck watching the stars wheel past. Somewhere among those distant lights were the worlds where their enemies waited, confident in their technological superiority and military might. They would learn, as others had learned before them, that humanity's greatest weapon had never been their flesh, but their indomitable spirit. The galaxy's superweapons couldn't overcome something that refused to be conquered, couldn't be purchased, and wouldn't surrender. The war for the galaxy's soul was about to begin, and humanity intended to win it not through destruction, but through liberation. They would prove that even the mightiest empire could fall when its subjects refused to remain slaves. The stars seemed to burn brighter as the human fleet dispersed toward their targets, carrying with them the hopes and dreams of billions of beings who had dared to imagine freedom. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, Sarah Chen thought as she prepared for humanity's final gamble, was exactly the point.